Joseph Stalin, one of the most infamous leaders of the 20th century, ruled the Soviet Union with an iron fist for nearly 3 decades. His rise to power, brutal policies, and impact on world history shaped the course of millions of lives. In this video, we'll explore the life, personality, and legacy of a man who left behind a complex and terrifying mark on the world. Joseph Stalin, born Yosef Vissarionis Dze Chugashvili on December 18, 1878, in Gori, Georgia, rose to become one of the most powerful and ruthless dictators in modern history. As the leader of the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953, Stalin's reign left a deep impact on world history through his leadership in World War II, his harsh policies of collectivization and industrialization, and his totalitarian control of Soviet society. While he is often remembered for his political actions and the millions of lives lost during his purges and famines, Stalin's lifestyle, personality, and the personal decisions he made offer a closer look at his complex and often contradictory character. His life was marked by a relentless ambition for power, paranoia, and a cold, calculating approach to leadership. Early life and revolutionary beginnings. Stalin was born into a poor family in the small town of Gori, in what was then part of the Russian Empire, now Georgia. His father, a shoemaker, was an alcoholic who beat Stalin regularly, and his mother was a deeply religious woman who hoped her son would become a priest. This difficult childhood, combined with the harsh environment of Georgia, shaped Stalin's early years and contributed to the tough and ruthless persona he would later adopt. Stalin attended a local church school, where he excelled academically and was awarded a scholarship to attend a seminary in Tbilisi. However, he soon became disillusioned with religion and turned his attention to Marxism and revolutionary activities. At the age of 20, he joined the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party and became an active revolutionary under the name Koba, engaging in bank robberies, strikes, and other illegal activities to raise funds for the revolutionary cause. Stalin's early revolutionary career was characterized by his involvement in underground Marxist movements and his ability to evade capture by the authorities. During this period, he developed a reputation as a tough and resourceful operative, a quality that caught the attention of Vladimir Lenin and other Bolshevik leaders. Rise to power in the Soviet Union. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, Stalin quickly rose through the ranks of the Bolshevik Party. He was appointed Commissar of Nationalities, and in 1922, he was named General Secretary of the Communist Party. Though initially considered a relatively minor post, Stalin used his position to build a vast network of loyal supporters within the party bureaucracy, quietly consolidating power. Following Lenin's death in 1924, a power struggle ensued within the Soviet leadership. Stalin emerged as the victor by outmaneuvering his rivals, including Leon Trotsky, Grigory Zinoviev, and Lev Kamenev. By the late 1920s, Stalin had established himself as the undisputed leader of the Soviet Union, effectively sidelining or eliminating his opponents. He cemented his authority through a combination of political skill, manipulation, and brutality. Stalin's lifestyle and personality. Stalin's personal lifestyle reflected his authoritarian and paranoid nature. Despite his immense power, he lived a relatively simple life by the standards of a dictator. He preferred modest surroundings, often living in dachas, country houses, rather than luxurious palaces. His favorite dacha, near the town of Kuntsevo, was where he spent much of his time during World War II and the latter part of his life. Though he had a reputation for modesty, Stalin maintained strict control over those around him. He was known to be extremely paranoid, trusting very few people, even those within his inner circle. This paranoia only intensified as he grew older and more powerful, leading him to carry out a series of purges in the 1930s that eliminated potential rivals and perceived enemies within the Communist Party, the military, and Soviet society at large. Stalin's personal relationships were also marked by mistrust and cruelty. His first wife, Cato Svanidze, died in 1907, leaving Stalin devastated. His second wife, Nadezhda Alliluyeva, reportedly committed suicide in 1932 after a heated argument with Stalin. Though some historians speculate she may have been murdered, Stalin's relationship with his children was similarly strained. He was a distant and often harsh father. Despite these personal tragedies, Stalin rarely showed public emotion or vulnerability. He cultivated an image of strength, resolve, and unflinching leadership. He was a master of propaganda, using it to create a cult of personality around himself. Soviet citizens were constantly exposed to images of Stalin as a wise and benevolent leader, even as millions of them suffered under his policies. Collectivization and industrialization. One of the hallmarks of Stalin's rule was his aggressive drive to transform the Soviet Union from a primarily agrarian society into a modern industrial superpower. In the late 1920s, Stalin launched the first of several five-year plans, which set ambitious targets for industrial production. These plans were implemented with brutal efficiency, and while they succeeded in dramatically increasing Soviet industrial output, they came at a tremendous human cost. Stalin's collectivization of agriculture was perhaps the most disastrous of his policies. The forced consolidation of individual farms into large, state-controlled collective farms led to widespread famine, particularly in Ukraine. Known as the Holodomor, the famine of 1932–1933 resulted in the deaths of millions of people. Stalin's government, however, refused to acknowledge the extent of the crisis, and grain continued to be exported abroad even as Soviet citizens starved. The Great Purge, Stalin's paranoia and desire for absolute control, led to one of the darkest chapters in Soviet history, the Great Purge. Beginning in 1936, Stalin initiated a series of political repressions, show trials, and executions aimed at eliminating anyone he saw as a threat to his rule. Thousands of party officials, military leaders, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens were arrested, tortured, and executed or sent to labor camps, gulags in Siberia. The purge decimated the Red Army's leadership, which had severe consequences for the Soviet Union during the early stages of World War II. Stalin's regime became synonymous with fear, surveillance, and repression, as the secret police NKVD monitored every aspect of Soviet life. Even close associates of Stalin were not immune to his wrath. Figures like Nikolai Bukharin, Grigory Zinoviev, and others who had once been prominent Bolsheviks were executed on Stalin's orders. World War II and the Soviet victory. World War II was a defining period of Stalin's rule. Initially, Stalin sought to avoid involvement in the conflict by signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Nazi Germany in 1939, which included a secret agreement to divide Eastern Europe between the two powers. However, this non-aggression pact was shattered in 1941 when Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. Caught off guard by the German invasion, Stalin's leadership in the early months of the war was erratic, and Soviet forces suffered devastating losses. However, Stalin quickly regained control and rallied the Soviet people for a fierce resistance. Under his leadership, the Soviet Union played a crucial role in the defeat of Nazi Germany, particularly in the Battle of Stalingrad, which became a turning point in the war. Stalin's reputation as a wartime leader was bolstered by Soviet victories, but his brutal tactics continued. He ordered the forced deportation of entire ethnic groups, including Chechens, Tatars, and others, whom he accused of collaborating with the Nazis. Millions were displaced, and many died during these forced relocations. Post-war era and Cold War. After World War II, Stalin emerged as one of the most powerful leaders in the world. He expanded Soviet influence over Eastern Europe, establishing communist regimes in countries like Poland, Hungary, and East Germany, which became satellite states of the Soviet Union. This expansion of Soviet power marked the beginning of the Cold War, a period of tense rivalry and ideological conflict between the Soviet Union and the Western powers, particularly the United States. During this period, Stalin maintained his grip on power through continued repression and purges. His policies, both domestic and foreign, were characterized by a deep suspicion of the West and a desire to secure Soviet dominance in global affairs. He was particularly wary of any challenges to his authority, and his paranoia extended to foreign communist leaders, some of whom he viewed as potential rivals. Death and legacy. Stalin's death on March 5, 1953, marked the end of an era in Soviet history. He died after suffering a stroke, and rumors have circulated that he may have been poisoned by his inner circle. Though there is no conclusive evidence to support this, his passing prompted a power struggle within the Soviet leadership, and his successors, including Nikita Khrushchev, would later denounce his brutal policies in the famous secret speech of 1956. Stalin's legacy is one of immense contradiction. On one hand, he transformed the Soviet Union into a global superpower and played a pivotal role in the defeat of Nazi Germany. On the other hand, his rule was marked by unimaginable human suffering, repression, and violence. Millions of Soviet citizens died as a result of his purges, famines, and forced labor camps. To this day, Stalin remains a polarizing figure. In Russia, some continue to view him as a strong leader who defended the nation and built its industrial might. Others see him as one of history's most ruthless dictators, responsible for the deaths of millions and the creation of a totalitarian regime that stifled freedom and individuality. Stalin's reign is a stark reminder of the dangers of absolute power and the devastating consequences of unchecked authoritarianism.